this section now is going to be on operationalizing your VMware Cloud and AWS environment. So this applies to, we showed migration, but this also applies to new environments as well. So this is basically, monitoring and managing your environment now that you have a VMC environment set up. And just a reminder, this is part 2 of the 3 sessions. So like I said, the part 1 was migration and planning. Part 2 is about managing the applications themselves. So again, a reminder on part 1, these are the pieces we covered: looking at our capacity, defining the applications, and migrating them, monitoring the network during the migration. So that's the important part from part 1. In this section, we're going to be monitoring the infrastructure, looking at the health of the infrastructure of virtual machines, making sure the applications or virtual machines are performing well. Look at capacity and waste, doing some chargeback, and also looking at the health of the network itself. So again, like I said, this is more. This applies to both brownfield and greenfield. So with that, let me switch over to the demo. Okay. So to start off, I want to show you a little bit continuing on what Martijn just showed. So he showed like discovering the applications and getting that visibility from the vRealize perspective. Now, through the integration between the 2 products, we actually can pull in those discovered applications into vRealize operations. So in this example, here we've got this our production shopping cart for our moad.io site. So I can go in here. So this is automatically synced. And you see here our tiers and the virtual machines that have been discovered based on the network data coming from vRealize. So really, really cool stuff to be able to have that kind of integration between the 2 and get that visibility and discovery from vRealize, and now take advantage of that in vRealize operations. So with that, it actually allows you to start, taking advantage of some of the data that's in vRealize operations as well. So if I expand this out a bit, you can see here I've got my application. Here's my database server. This is my database virtual machine, and then I can go in here and I can see all kinds of metrics that we collect from vCenter for the virtual machine itself. But we can also do other things like we see here I've got my guest OS. So this is the Linux operating system inside the virtual machine, so I can monitor the health of the Linux OS itself. And I can dig even more. Here is my SQL database server. So this is the MySQL server instance in here, and then go even deeper. Now I'm down to my actual database for this application. So we've now gone from vRealize discovering it all the way down to the actual database itself. And it just kind of gives us that visibility across the entire stack. So, each of these objects, we have a lot of metrics that we collect for those. So, when you're looking at monitoring the health of an application and make sure that the things are performing well, we have all of these metrics to pull from. So, hopefully that makes sense. It helps you understand, from the visibility perspective. The other thing this gives us the ability to do is, like if I go to alerts here, so I can say I want to look at all of my alerts for all child objects. So now, based on this one application, here's all the alerts related to the various objects that affect this application. So we see there's some vSAN alerts here. I've got some PCI compliance alerts. I've got a vSphere security configuration guide alert. I even have alerts here coming from like login site, and we could even see the ones coming from vRealize in here as well. If we had an active alert on this particular application, those would show here as well.
What we're looking at here is just a VM, right? We're not talking Kubernetes down into namespaces and all that, obviously, but I assume it plays in that area as well, and we'll get there possibly.
Yeah, we can monitor Kubernetes. So we can monitor both vSphere with the vSphere with Tanzu containers and pods. We can also monitor just regular straight up Kubernetes as well. So that's something we're demoing today, but that is okay. Supported. And
does it also, and then I'll end with this, does it also give you visibility from an auditing perspective, like from security, being able to define what my security posture should look like as well in the container world? And again, I'll end with that because I know we're not going to get to that, but just to add that real quick.
Yeah, so any of the metrics or the data that we collect for those objects, you can define alerts for those. So it could be, you could say, this particular setting is not set to whatever. You can define those alerts and customize those. So that any of those kind of thing are possible. So it's just a matter of defining an alert based on those various properties.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so let me switch over now. So now we want to talk about actually monitoring VMC itself. So this is looking at the VMC infrastructure and the virtual machines that I have running in my VMC environment. So with vRealize operations, basically vCenter is vCenter. It doesn't matter if it's on-prem vCenter or VMware Cloud on AWS. It's the same thing. So all the features that we have in vRealize operations work basically the same, regardless of whether it's on-prem or VMC. So what I'm going to show here is kind of some of the VMC specific stuff. So you can see some of the additional value you get on the VMC side. So hopefully that makes sense. So the first dashboard that I want to show you here is one that we have. This is out of the box. So this one is looking at the inventory. So this kind of would show me all of my SDDCs that I've subscribed to. I only have one in this environment. What we can see here is my cluster in this SDDC. Here's my data store. Here's my hosts, and then all the virtual machines in the environment. So like I said, it's an inventory. Nothing too exciting, but just kind of gives you an idea of what's running in that particular SDDC. So we know what's there. Getting a little more in depth now, switching over to this VMC utilization and performance dashboard. This is where you can start looking at what's going on in the environment. So I've selected my SDDC up here, and now I go in and I can see things like the performance and utilization from a CPU and memory perspective. So I see things here like my usage for CPU and memory, and then I have other important metrics that are pointed out for performance perspective. So things like ready time, co-stop, IO wait, we've got memory balloon, swap in, memory contention, and these are all designed as top in. So basically, the ones that have the highest are basically bubbled up to the top. So if you're having problems, it'll identify the potential ones just by the fact that they're on top of the list. So that's kind of the idea from the top in, or top 25 here. And we have a similar section down here for network and storage. So we can look at our network utilization per virtual machine, and also our storage utilization as well. And then we have things like various performance metrics that are important. So we have from the network side, we have packets per second, both receive and transmit. We've got drop packets. We have storage, read and write latency, outstanding IOs. All the typical things you would want to go look at if you're having a performance problem. And the idea is this will help get you to those really quick. And like I said, this all has the context of VMC. So I just selected my VMC SDDC, and it automatically shows me everything for that particular SDDC.
I have a question there.
Yeah.
And it's actually very relevant because I'm working with a customer with i3EN hosts, and it's a very, very high performance requirements that they need for their virtual machines. And we are looking at, for a particular block size, what the latencies are, but also IOPS. So latency I can see over here, and it's showing in milliseconds. But then again, does it give you sort of a map of the block sizes being written to the storage, and what are the latency we're seeing for the certain block sizes, but also IOPS as well?
Yes, we do have those metrics. Yeah, the metrics are there. They're not on this particular dashboard, but we do have them. We track the metric, and we do track IOPS, latency, throughput. I don't know if block size is in there. I'd have to double check on the block size, but I know we have all those metrics there. So
right,
it'll help.
To enable that, you will still need to go on your VMC environment and enable the vRealize Network Insight plugin or something.
No. So when you connect vRealize operations to VMC, when you connect it in there, it'll start collecting that data automatically. So it's just a matter of establishing that connection. I didn't show the configuration in here, but we have a wizard that you go through and you just add your VMC. You add your VMC environment, and there's a tab in there. You can actually enable vSAN monitoring. So this will monitor the vSAN infrastructure part as well. So you can look at the disk groups, how the disk groups are performing, or individual disks within a host. So like if you had one disk that was performing poorly across all of your hosts, you can get really granular. It's a vSAN, so you can get all the way down to the specific disks, or you can look at it just from a VM by VM perspective. So if you have like one VM that has high IOPS, you can get the identify that one, and then maybe look at potentially moving it to a different size cluster that can handle higher IO or something like that. Does that help? Is that
no, that's fine. I think I've sort of misnamed the plugin. I think you still need the vRealize Operation Cloud plugin to be enabled to be able to see this dashboard, but the performance metrics, I think, are being collected automatically. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. Yes, that is correct.
Okay, yeah, that answers the question.
Cool.
Thanks.
I'm clear about products. When you were showing us the application drop-down, at the top it said vRealize Operations Manager. It now says vRealize Operations Cloud at the top. Is that just the on-premises and cloud version of the same product, or is it a different product?
They are. Right, it's the on-prem and cloud version. They're the same product basically. They're built on the same code base. It's just I switched between a couple of environments because where I have the demos set up.
So just wanted to check to make sure it wasn't two different products and two different dashboards.
It's not. It's the same. The next dashboard I want to show you here is the capacity dashboard. So this one is designed to look at my SCDC from a capacity perspective. So there's three main numbers that we use in vRealize Operations to portray the amount of capacity in a particular cluster. So that we have capacity remaining. So this one is expressed in percentage. So this is based on the most constrained resource. So I have 66% of capacity remaining. I have 366 days of capacity remaining. So this is based on our projected utilization. I won't need additional capacity for the next year, basically. So even though I'm at 66% capacity remaining, my growth rate is not high enough to really warrant that to be something critical. So between the two, that gives me an idea of where we are and how critical it is. And the last one down here is the virtual machines remaining. So this lets me see how many virtual machines I can fit in the environment. So based on the average size of the virtual machine, the average utilization of the virtual machine, I can fit 108 more virtual machines in this environment before I will run out of capacity. So between these three numbers, it makes it really easy, really simple to understand where you are from a capacity perspective. So I know when I'm going to run out of capacity, I know how much capacity I have left, and then how many VMs I can fit. So very, very useful stuff. And then we have other supporting data down here, like looking at the clusters, the hosts, the data stores, et cetera. So there's a lot more on this dashboard than just looking at the SCDC, but hopefully that makes sense from a capacity perspective. From a cost perspective, we actually connect into the cloud services portal, and we actually capture the bill that is presented on the portal, and we actually bring that into vRealize Operations. So you see here, I've got my bill for my environment showing up. I've got my outstanding expense. So this is saying so far this month, I have an outstanding expense of $45,000. So I'll can kind of keep track of where I'm going for my spend throughout the month. And then if I had any commit, like if I had a 1 year or 3 year commit contract, you would see the cost for those commit contracts showing here as well. This environment's all on demand. I have my on-demand expense. So this is year to date, and then this is my total expense. So this would be my my commit and my on-demand. So the idea here is you can kind of track your spend and how much your bill how it looks over time. So we have other data here like showing how it tracks over time. We have here some graphs showing what it looks like for my my total, my commit, and my on-demand. Disregard the zeros. This is an internal lab, so it's getting some zeros here because we don't actually get bills for internal usage. But you kind of use your imagination on that one. So the last thing here is looking at our purchase history. So this was where we'll see line items for like all the hosts that we subscribe to, whether they're on demand or they're on a commit contract, even things like our egress charges. will show up here. So if you have egress charges, between one data center and another, or from one data center to the internet, those egress charges will show up as line items in this purchase history as well. So it helps you, just keep track of how your spend is going over time. So hopefully that helps understand from a cost perspective. That's what we do.
When you get into spend and cost and chargeback and all that, are you seeing customers of this also facilitating and using this tool as a way to charge back to their customers? And I don't mean their customers being internal IT, which technically you could treat them as the same. Is that a normal use case? Are you seeing?
Yes.
Okay.
We are, and it's actually becoming more important for VMC because there is that monthly spend that's coming out there, and they want to be more cognizant of the usage. Want to make sure that you're being as optimized as possible, getting the most efficient use of the host you subscribe to. You only subscribe to a host when you need it. You can return a host when you don't need it, that kind of stuff. So cost visibility is really important. And I'll show you a little bit here in a minute on what we can do from a chargeback perspective, and then how that works in a VMC environment. So
awesome. Because that would be useful, like from an MSP perspective or something like that, to that flavor.
Yeah, definitely for MSPs. Yeah. It is very important for MSPs. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Stay tuned. I'll show you that here in just a minute. Okay. So to continue on, one of the important parts for a VMC environment is understanding of your management infrastructure. I know it seems kind of odd, you think VMware is managing it for you, but there are reasons and circumstances where you want to know what's going on in your management environment, because they are actually consuming resources in your SCDC. So that's the kind of purpose of this dashboard here. So you can see I've got my SCDC selected. Here's my resource pool for my management virtual machines, and then here's all of the virtual machines that are responsible for managing my SCDC. So you see I have vCenter, here's my NSX managers, here's my NSX edges, my HCX manager, and then here's those HCX appliances that Martijn was just showing. These are those same appliances that he was showing. So I can see, like this particular section is showing CPU, so I can look at the CPU usage for this particular virtual machine for HCX. I can see other things like memory usage for all the management virtual machines, and then I have storage again for all of them. And then the one here that's pretty interesting that a lot of VMC customers need to understand and keep track of. This one is actually monitoring the network utilization. So like Martijn was showing, when we do these HCX migrations, you need to make sure you're not saturating the edge and potentially causing network issues. So from a vSphere admin perspective, this is what I can see. So I can see things like the packets per second, receive and transmit, which are the important metrics when you're doing these migrations. And I want to show you what we get. So this, I'm going to show you a feature that we get in vRealize Operations Cloud. So this is a feature that's only available in vRealize Operations Cloud currently. So what I want to do is actually dig into those packets per second. And so I go in here and pick my packets per second, receive and transmit. And you see here, it looks like there was some traffic that happened a little earlier. I want to, by default, vRealize Operations collects data every 5 minutes. But now in this new feature that's in vRealize Operations Cloud, we have the ability to turn on near real-time monitoring. So this actually changes that collection cycle from 5 minutes down to 20 seconds. So what I'm going to do is set this little clock icon here, and now I've switched this view in to show me the near real-time data. And I want to zoom in here on this peak. So let me go in really close here. So we can see now what's going on in this environment. So we see we have 20,000, almost 21,000 packets per second. Here's my peak. And then I can go and look, and you see every one of these is 20 seconds apart. So this is something customers have been asking for, and this is something that's really important, especially for a VMC environment, is just make sure you're not saturating your edges, because if you if you saturate your edge, you could affect your entire SCDC. So this is where, like as a vSphere admin, I want to be able to monitor it and know what's going on. But if I see a problem here, then I would go to Martijn. Says it looks like my packets per second is really high on our edge. Can you look in vRealize, figure out what's going on? Where's that traffic coming from? Is it the HDX migration? Is it some other usage that's going on? So this kind of gives me an insight that, oh, there might be a network problem. And then that's when I would hand it over and talk to Martijn and said, okay, help me figure out what's going on. Is it something that we need to worry about? So hopefully that helps you understand. The near real-time monitoring piece is really important, especially for VMC customers. It comes up quite a bit, and especially when you're looking at things like dispatches per second. And I can create alerts based on this as well. So if I wanted to create an alert that alerts me with 20 seconds after once this peak happens, I could do that. It might be a bit chatty, but it's definitely possible to enable with this feature.
Would you typically enable that when you're looking into a problem rather than a broad brush 20 seconds across everything that you're monitoring?
So right now, the way it's available is a setting that you enable on a vCenter by vCenter basis. So I go in and say, okay, turn it on for my VMC vCenter, and it starts collecting this data, near real-time data, every 20 seconds from that specific vCenter. So it's every metric that's available. So this is on the hosts, on the VMs, on the clusters, everything coming from that vCenter then comes in as 20 seconds. But there's other metrics that are that are calculated by the system, like capacity doesn't need to be every 20 seconds. Do you really need to know how capacity changes every 20 seconds? That kind of stuff is not, but the actual performance data that we pull from vCenter is every 20 seconds. By default, we save this data for 3 days, so you can go back and look up to 3 days, and then we purge out that data, but we still have the 5-minute data that's available there. So that's stored based on your retention settings in vRealize operations. So I'm going to show you what we can do now from a chargeback perspective. So I want to go in, if I go to the right page here, my cost settings. So this is a new feature that was added in vRealize Operations 8.2, and it's also in vRealize Operations Cloud. This is the ability to define pricing cards. So what I can do now is go in here. I'll show you the one that I've got configured. I have options here of defining my rate cards based on price, or my pricing cards based on price or by rate. So for our VMC environment, we need to use it by rate. And what we can do is configure things like, like here I have $5 per vCPU per month, only when the virtual machine is powered on. I have $10 per gigabyte of memory per month, only when the VM is powered on, and then $1 per gig, well, not per hour, it's a bit extreme, but I can do per month always. So I can start defining how I want to price these virtual machines. And then I have other things like here like do the price based on the OS that's installed, based on tags that are applied to the virtual machines. There's a lot of options in here. I'm not going to go through all of them for the sake of time. And then we have overall charges. So these are like a setup fee and ongoing maintenance fees that you can apply to the virtual machines. And then the last thing is here, I can assign these to specific objects. So like I want to create if I create a pricing card specifically for VMC, I can go in here and say, I want to pick my VMC vCenter, go and find it, and boom, add it in here. There's my pricing card for VMC. So this is defining how the system does the pricing. And I've got a dashboard here. I can show you what this data looks like. So by default here, this is showing me the vSphere world. So this is every virtual machine in my environment. So I can see things like my month-to-date price. I can see the price for powered off VMs, idle VMs, VMs with snapshots. So this gives me an idea of some of the reclaimable stuff that I can do. I have my price distribution to figure out, like, why is this one virtual machine so much more expensive than everything else? Maybe it's worth investigating. So we have things like this, trying to figure out what's going on here. So let me see here, there's that outlier. I think it's probably because I put the storage charge based on per hour instead of per month. But then I can do things like that application that was discovered by vRealize. So I can search for Moed production shopping cart, go in here and select my application. And now I can see here's the month-to-date price for that Moed application. here's the virtual machines that make up that application, how much, what the price of each of those virtual machines. And then if I had powered off idle and VMware snapshots, I could do that. And then here's my price breakdown. So I can save this to like a CSV to send it off to my end users saying, here's what it costs to run your virtual machines, or I can give them access to the dashboard, I can run reports. There's a lot of options, but the idea here is this is where you can start showing that accountability to the users. And Vincent will show a bit more of that here in the next section, where how you can get this price visibility into vRealize automation, so the users will see it in themselves as well.
Quick question again.
Yeah.
There is, and is there a programmatic way to define all this externally? So obviously the API, I don't want to say API, but I'm going to say API. Because I mean, I'm seeing a XML, CSV, and I'm like, okay, everybody's going to be upset because there's no YAML or JSON or whatever. So,
Yeah.
Is there an external API that I can programmatically do this thing?
Yeah, so for pricing, we actually have APIs that you can use to
Okay.
define the pricing cards, and you can assign the pricing cards to the specific objects. And then there's also APIs that you can use to pull out the objects and the metrics that are calculated by them. So these prices are just metrics. So it's the same APIs you use to pull CPU utilization. You just pick the price metric, and then you're pulling out the price data. So we have basically on both ends, doing the configuration, the association, and retrieval of that pricing data.
Perfect.
So we can do all of it. Yeah, no problem. So here's my VMC environment. I showed a little bit more here about what I showed earlier. These are actually getting into the details for the projections of the cluster and knowing where I am from a capacity perspective. So we can see what my historical utilization has been like, and here's my projection on what the utilization is going to be into the future. So these are even more details than what I showed before. This is getting an idea of where we are and then where the system is going. And I can get even more in depth in here, but I'm not going to for the sake of time. But the idea is we can track these clusters from a capacity perspective, just like we do on-prem clusters. It's the same.